Hello, this is the second part of the course in which we will talk about all the different psychiatric situations, panorama that we can see, but we have to start from the opening theater of any psychiatric syndrome, which is the psychiatric crisis. It is not only an existential crisis, not some sort of weak suffering, but an intense episode who changes the life of the person. The person who walks in your office and tells you, I'm not the one I was before. There's something deeply changed in me. It's because there has been this crisis, this sort of essential change. That is a transformation in the identity, a sort of death of what was previously present, of the old regime, and so a sort of crumbling of the identity, a sort of death, but it is a psychological death. The symptoms of this being profoundly changed are a sort of depersonalization, with the symptoms of not feeling that you recognize what you wear, you don't recognize your body, you don't recognize the situation, the house. Sometimes previously we have dreamt of not recognizing the house or the people or the faces. They are prodromal symptoms of this not recognizing, not being the same. So something essential has changed, and you're sort of translated into a different identity, into the true self. The true self has found again himself, but the old identity, the old illusion of being this body, this story, this limited, separated identity, has died. And so there is a sort of transferring to a new house, much wider, without a roof probably. And the symptoms accompanying this loss of everything, of loss of our family, of our beliefs, the loss even of ourselves, is the first of the symptoms that are evident in a weaker or stronger form, and often implicitly present even when other symptoms, energetic symptoms or reactive symptoms we will talk about just in a moment, are prevalent. Anyway, these are always the first point of the crisis. The fact that something has interrupted the previous continuity, the previous illusion, is as if one awakens from a dream which has had several stages, but anyway was never in the situation of an awakening. When the awakening comes, all the rest goes away, fades away, and we are in a different consciousness situation. So depersonalization, demotivation, not feeling pleasure in anything, anhedonia, all these symptoms are part of this initial crisis. The second series of symptoms are related to the energy which opens up in this situation. Like if it was a childbirth, the fact that the childbirth begins, then puts in action all the contractions, periodical activity of the muscles to let the child come to the light. So this situation is as if you had bought a new house, I was saying, and you have now doing the house transfer. There's a lot of energetic activity which is gradual, which depends on the interruptions, on the difficulties that these energies encounter during their cleansing and transformation process, a sort of death and rebirth. And these symptoms are perceived from the residual ego as fear. Generalized fear, a sort of inner trembling, a sort of destabilization of the whole perceptual field, which can be also localized in specific chakras, like the sight can be interrupted or different, or you can have also hallucinations, the hearing as well, you can hear sounds in the ear or even voices. You can have in the throat chakra a difficulty in breathing, in saying something, difficulty in the heart chakra, like if the heart was broken, or if you can have tachycardia, arrhythmia. You can have a sense of oppression in the chest. You can have at the third chakra vomiting or nausea, or on the contrary, a strong rages. Second chakra, you can have hypoactivity or hyperactivity, sexually speaking. So all the chakras are manifesting some symptoms on a more subtle or on a more material level. The material and physical side of these activations is what we call about the Kundalini activation, the physio-Kundalini. That's what Dr. Lee Sanella was talking about in his book of the 70s, which was called Psychosis, Kundalini Psychosis or Transcendence. It was really a remarkable book, and there's also the presentation of an explanation by a model of a scientist whose name was Bentov, who was explaining some of these energetic movements as activations of specific areas of the sensitivity cortex. Anyway, when this Kundalini, either on the more physical side or on the more general side, is activated, it is like an accompaniment of the first stage of the identity crisis. It's like if this Shakti side energy or the Shiva side pure consciousness of the individual in this case are always connected, as they say in the tradition, that they are always in a sexual continuous conjunction. These two first stages, which can be even more explained. For example, the energetic symptoms on the mental level could be that the thoughts are much more in quantity and in rapidity, or emotions are much more strong and expressed, and all the motor, sensorial, and perceptual, even subtle qualities like the siddhis of the yogis are all expressed because of this energetic activity, which widens and goes further and becomes more subtle. But beyond these two stages, which are always together, there's a third series of symptoms, which are the reactions of the residual ego to the ongoing process. So the reactions to losing the identity could be trying to confirm the identity in many ways, like as we see in the obsessive compulsive syndrome, or in trying to avoid the energetic possible upheaval, and so the evitation process, which can organize in the disturbances that we see in the chronic avoidance that we see in some neurotics. In this sense, neurosis is a sort of worsening of the initial process. A panic attack is something that can be invalidating, but only partially, while the disturbance that comes from it, that stems from it because of the organization of avoiding systematically and preventively all possible situations that could come with the activation of the energy, is really an invalidating process, which is much worse. So in these three series, we recognize that any patient coming inside our office has some of this. Generally, the third series is prevalent, and in the first place is because the patient is not agreeing with what is happening. It's his contrariation that is in the first place the reason for looking for therapy. So the therapist has to reinterpret and to propose a different approach to suffering, which is to come to terms with it, to try to transform and not to avoid it, to enter and to go through the suffering and to see with discrimination who is suffering. The old regime is suffering and is still creating all the trouble, because the process may be painful, but is actually a sort of transformation which will go for the best if it is helped and accepted. As for the future meetings, we will see in detail the individual situations in which the psychiatric crisis organizes in a form of main identity component, like for example in the psychosis, or mainly through the energetic aspects like panic attacks and bipolar syndrome, or mainly through the reactions, and then we will have all the neurosis in which we remain stuck into this war, which we will eventually lose. But also some psychosis like paranoia is mainly characterized to the defense against the psychotic condition of losing one's identity. So let's see the next time the energetic syndromes. Goodbye.